Hello, Kathy Lawless here, Life Story Curator, bringing you this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people who are just starting out in their career, in transition, or maybe feeling stuck, and giving them access to other stories of people who are successful in their careers, survived being in transition, and probably have also been stuck at one point or another, so they get to hear those stories. Today I'm talking with Brenda Kaser-Burger, who is a former corporate executive who's also started her own consulting business, but now is looking to become part of a for-profit board of directors. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So excited to meet you and to hear your story.
Thank you.
So I always like to start with the icebreaker questions, which are, where did you grow up? How many siblings? Where are you in the birth order? And how did that kind of shape you as a person?
Okay. Well, I actually was born in Seattle, but we moved to Colorado not too long after that. So all my school years were in Littleton, Colorado.
So almost a Colorado native.
Yeah, almost. And I was the middle child, so I had an older sister that was definitely the older sister realm of, she got straight A's and was definitely, when I would go behind her, a couple of years behind her, they'd say, "Oh, are you Sandy's sister?" And I'd say, "Oh, yeah," thinking they wanted me to get straight A's too.
Yeah, they already knew.
Yes. Had a little sister that was 5 years younger, so she was a little bit younger. So she would play with her, but it'd be a little bit different with her. She was more the real social and loved to play, and she's always still been the social gal. She loves people. They love her. She's great. So I think as a middle child, I found my place that I sometimes would go with the flow, kind of be the peacemaker, in the family, as well as trying to find my niche. I did okay with grades. I wasn't straight A's, but I also didn't, have trouble. But I found my way really around sports. So I was in track, and I was a sprinter and loved to be in that realm. And also did choir. We also all took piano, and so there's a little bit of music there too. But I think as a middle child, that continued into my career, that I really wanted to make my way and figure out who I was, and because I tended to grow up kind of going with the flow with everyone.
Yeah. And a little bit in your sister's footsteps, and a little bit of the shadow maybe, but 3 years difference there, and then
so
5.
About 2 years difference between my older sister and then 5 to my younger sister.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I can totally relate to middle child, ran track.
Yeah, really.
Okay. Very relatable. Yeah. And then, but I also play the piano.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely
we have a lot in common. This is crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so on the fun meter, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato, 5 being the life of the party, where would you put yourself?
That's an interesting question for me, because I'm an introvert by nature, for sure. I did, we'll hear more about my IBM career, but did a lot of the Myers-Briggs testing and all that, and really found what an introvert I was. But in the career world, of course, and in life, you really need to get out there and be the life of the party. And so I found I could do both, and especially as a middle child, then I was kind of the silly one. So I think it was my way to fit into the family and to be the peacemaker, and I could make the jokes. And so growing up, I was like that. Then in my career life, I would put myself on the meter maybe in between, around 3 or 3.5, something like that. That I like to, when I'm in a group, I like to have fun. I like to be the one that adds and contributes to the stories and all of that kind of thing. But also I'm an introvert and get my energy from needing to be quiet and alone. And I love my books. My quiet self-reflective.
So it sounds like it's situational.
Yes.
And what your role is. Like if you're in a leadership role, then you're going to be more outgoing and...
That's a perfect way to put it.
And if you're the host of the party, you're going to be more outgoing. But if you're a participant, then okay.
Exactly.
Like you said, go with the flow. I get it.
Yeah.
And again, a fellow middle person, I can relate to the silliness too and the playfulness.
Okay. Yeah, playfulness. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, on the risk meter then, same scale, 1 to 5, how are you on taking risks?
So I think on that one, it's a little situational too, that in my career, I felt very confident. And I when I'm in technology and the world that I love, then it's easy for me to step out there because I felt like I knew it and I knew what to do, and I love to take risks that way. But in my personal life, I'm very much a planner, and I like to have predictability.
Don't we all?
I guess we all do. The math, computer science side of me really wants to have the black and white and, that kind of thing. So I've tried hard in my career to stretch, and I feel like I've done that quite a few times. And then maybe it doesn't feel like a risk because I'm feeling confident.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'd say I'm kind of in the middle on that one too. Maybe 3.5 again.
I get a lot of 3.5s. They don't want to go with the 3.
Yeah.
They don't want to go with the 4, but
right, that's it.
So we are just tips. It tips on the scale to the middle. So, okay, great. Well, I think yours is definitely a story about transition, as we were talking about earlier, because you had this great corporate executive, or a corporate career that we're going to get into a little bit, but then also you can do consulting, take that knowledge and help other businesses, but also take that same information, right? And and how could that be as a board member or board of director then? So talk a little bit about what you're doing today, and then we'll get back into how did I get here?
Okay. So exactly today. What I'm doing today is taking that executive career, IBM corporate background, and doing many different roles in that realm. And then I also was a C-level executive in a nonprofit, so I'm taking that knowledge and bringing that together with helping these other companies. This consulting I'm doing now is the range from startups to big corporations. So taking all that knowledge and realizing that on a board of directors, I can really bring a lot to the table. And I'm very passionate about helping corporations move forward and whatever they're needing to do, whether it's growth or turnaround or really making a difference in the community. That I really learned that big corporations have a lot of resources. And I want to be part of that in terms of really moving this world forward, because we've got so many things that we need to take care of in this world, our earth and the people, and there's so many things we can do, and big corporations are a big part of that.
And as a board of director, then you have a different level of influence than you would as being on the leadership team. So, okay.
Exactly.
Well, cool. Well, we'll get into that a little bit more as we travel through your journey. So let's go back to junior high school. What did you want to be when you grew up?
So I originally started out wanting to be a wild animal trainer. I thought that I loved animals, and I'm very intrigued by animal behavior and
wild animal trainer, not just
wild animal. Yeah, definitely loved all the wild animals, and so that was my first love. And going through school, then I went eventually to college thinking I wanted to be a forest ranger because that seemed a little more practical. But I could still be outside, and I could still be part of the animals. And then slowly moved the journey a bit to teacher. I thought, well, maybe I'll be a teacher because that seemed a little more predictable, and I loved kids and thought about that journey. Then I met a math professor that in those days, getting into math and computer science, especially for a woman, was a big thing in college. I was one of 2 women in the whole college. So,
wow. What college did you go to?
At Fort Lewis College.
Fort Lewis, okay.
Yeah, in Durango. And that we had a program where it was a sister school to CSU, Colorado State University. And so got into math and computer science and loved it, and never looked back from that. Just decided to go that journey, and graduated with math and computer science degree.
Wow. So it wasn't until you were in college, though, that you kind of went down this math computer route. Sometimes some of the interviewees have talked about, I was good in math and science in high school, and therefore that's the degree I went into. But you went in for forest ranger.
Yes.
And came out with math and computer.
Exactly.
Okay. So what was your first job then?
So I had in college my last year, there was a grant with NASA that we were, in those days, we were taking satellite bits, data coming from satellites and helping the computers to understand what trees were and roads and that kind of thing. It was way back. And I was part of that grant and just loved the whole science programming area. And IBM had seen that. A friend of mine his father worked at IBM, and so he saw me working on that grant. He said, hey, why don't you come over to IBM for an internship my summer before I graduated. And so I went and did the internship at IBM, and then that really led to the later job. I interviewed at quite a few places because it's definitely sought after, and as a woman. But IBM had the best pay as well as benefits, and I saw the corporate worldwide, and I really wanted to travel and see the world and be part of all of that.
Oh, so that you were attracted to them as a company. Well, and
Yes.
such a big name
Yeah.
and brand, right? So if you don't mind me asking, I know this is going to date you.
Okay, yeah.
But can you give me the dates? Because I think that helps people understand when you're looking at math and technology, and you're also looking at women in leadership, all of that plays in terms of what decade we're talking about.
Yes. I graduated in 79 from high school, way back, and 83 from college. And so that was really during the time, those early 80s, it was brand new computer science, really, even the cards. And
Well, yeah, because this wasn't PC world at all.
No,
This was
no,
big
mainframe
stuff.
All big mainframe,
Wow.
big computer centers. And so it was most of the meetings, or eventually I got into management pretty quickly, because in those days, if you were a woman and could communicate new technology, that was immediately I wanted to put you into a team lead and then manager role really fast. So I very quickly started managing programming teams and then big computer centers, and evolved from there.
So even though you didn't have any management experience,
Yeah.
they also, I know IBM is known for some of their leadership programs, right?
Right. I was very lucky to be part of a corporation that they do a lot of training. And so there's so much. In those days, you went back to a management center, and you actually had a whole training on becoming a manager. Of course, it's almost like any corporation, though. You go into the management position and you're in it for about 6 months before you go to the training. So you have to just jump on board and start talking to the people. But I think having those people skills, I've always loved to get to know people and what they love and what motivates them and how they fit into the team, and being able to connect that to the goals we needed to really achieve for the corporation. So it was really natural for me to do that just personally, so I could do that quickly over the 6 months and know the technology they were talking about. And then once I went to school, that just helped elevate, those leadership skills and how to bring that back to the table and work with people. I do have a funny story. When I first started my very first meeting, when I'm brand new manager, probably 24 years old, 23, 24, and they're all looking at me, all way older than I am, and they all are telling me that the prior manager was so much fun and they loved him, and am I going to be as funny as they are in the department meetings? And I was just so intimidated by that, because I thought, funny? Well, I don't know how to be funny. And plus, I'm a brand new manager, I'm this kid, and so it was definitely the first few meetings were pretty tough. I had to try to up my funness, as you talk about, as well as try to manage the group and get to know them. And so it was quite a challenge, but those things turned out great in the end. So.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you were maybe one of the youngest persons in your on your team. And were you the only woman?
I actually did have one woman that she was ahead of me. She was a systems programmer, but that was it. The rest were men. And most of my career was always men in all the meetings or reporting to me.
Yeah. Now, leadership tracks are very interesting, right, in terms of your personality. It sounds like you had a good personality for it, but, I've met some people who are like, oh, I tried that leadership thing. I didn't want the hassle of it, and I didn't want the responsibility of it. What were your thoughts? I mean, again, you're very young. You're going into this where you're like, well, this is great. And were you drawn more like, I wish I could just do the technology stuff? Or were you like, no, this is really, now I'm finding it's a great fit for me?
It was definitely a stretch for me, and I would have days that I'd say, what am I doing? Why don't I just go to the corner and program like I thought I was going to do it from school, And so I'd kind of go back and forth, but my real nature is people and making their lives better. So I would see that connection, and I would see we were making IBM better, we were making things better for our clients. I realized pretty quickly the bigger purpose was just more important to me than my introverted safety of sitting in the corner. So I found that while it stretched me, but it really also brought me satisfaction to that part of myself that, oh, that's right, this is fun to be helping people, and these are real people in real lives that have families, and we're all, trying to take care of ourselves and move ahead and do good things for ourselves and the company. Yeah.
Wow. So you just kind of moved up the ranks then, and
Yes, and I did different things. IBM is pretty, if you're moving up in the ranks like that, they really want you to manage different areas of IBM before you get to the executive ranks. So I went out and managed the branch office for a while, which was all sales. I still tried to stay on the technical side. We called it systems engineering in those days, but so I managed mostly the more techie side. It'd be hardware and software, but it was so good for me to really be in touch with the clients every day and realize we were affecting their businesses every single day and improving their businesses as well as IBM's. And then also did some consulting for IBM. So I got into a realm that was more import-export, all the supply chain you hear about today. We did all the importing and exporting for IBM. And that really helped me to understand. We had about 300 systems that did importing and exporting, and I was responsible for all of that and the programmers. And getting around the year 2000, it was huge. Remember in those days?
Oh, geez, yeah, Y2K, Y2K.
And that was so fun for me to go to all the countries. So we had 190 some countries that we had little systems or connections to subsidiaries, and so we had to get everything ready for the year 2000, and we made it, of course, like most people, and it ended up turning out great, which is awesome. But it was a big thing for IBM, and for me, I got the Chairman's Award, our chairman that. For all the work we did on that, because we were ready and had no problems.
Wow, so congratulations.
Yeah.
It's funny, my husband's in the IT world, and the Y2K thing, came and went, and some of the business people that he worked with kind of made the comment, well, it ended up being a non-event. And he's like, well, that's because
we prepared
so well for this. And so you had to give kudos for, because it could have gone very differently. The company I was in, same thing. We spent a lot of time prepping for it and everything, and it ended up a non-event, which is a good thing. So, on one hand you could say, well, did we all just overreact? And I say no. Most times it's when you're caught unawares of something that, big problems happen.
Exactly.
So how long were you there in total then?
So 34 and a half years.
34 and a half. So you went through, because IBM, up, down in terms of growth, and then, you'd see it in the news that, their sales are down and they missed the boat on the PCs and all these things, right? And then, so you were part of a lot of reinvention, I would say.
Yes, that's a great word. That's exactly what happened. And I think that background I'd love to bring to the table for a board of directors, because I really watched things like, should we have sold the PC business sooner, or should we have, all those things we grappled with, because in those days I got to the higher levels where we would be in these meetings of all the senior managers and have discussions on where is IBM going in the next 5 or 10 years, and why, and what are those signs that we need to watch for, and then we run our businesses based on those strategic goals and that kind of thing. So I'd love to bring that knowledge to other companies.
Yeah. The highs and lows, right?
Exactly.
Because here's the lessons learned on how we missed the boat on X,
right?
Or here's where we got it right. Maybe it was lucky, or maybe it was strategic, or because you have to look at, I'm guessing, where's technology going? Then where's IBM going? Now where's our division going? Right? Peel all that back. Wow.
Right.
Very cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, so it sounds like they not only invested in you as a leader with training, but also by all of these different assignments. So when you think of someone starting out in their career, I know I'm a proponent of get on the leadership track. I mean, you get exposed to so many things. But also you get a view of the whole business, and that's so important, don't you think?
I do. It depends on what a person's goals are, but it's pretty rare someone really truly wants to just sit in the corner and program all day long. There's a few, and if that's truly what they want to do, and are happy doing it, and they can make a living and all that, then definitely they should do that. But it definitely has a different view. If you want to have more of the wide view, then you for sure need to get into some leadership roles, even if it's a team lead. Maybe they don't want to get into management, and that was the nice thing at IBM. We had a technical track and a leadership management track. So some people could, if they wanted to stay real techie, they could continue. We had a higher level called distinguished engineer that they had to still be a little bit leadership because you're a team lead of technology.
Okay.
Well, you couldn't still sit in the corner, but you had to lead a technical team, but you didn't manage the people. You didn't have to do their evaluations. You'd give input to it, but the managers would do the final evaluations and all that maybe they did not want to get into the people side. So people should investigate that in their companies.
Yeah.
I don't think we even evolved to that till later, but most companies have that now where they really value people's leadership in the technology side as well as the management side.
Yeah.
And so you can do pretty big things on both sides, but it still takes leadership skills and communication skills, reaching outside yourself, improving yourself, self-reflection, lots of big areas that you can't just put on your shoes and go in each day and just hope. You really need to be improving who you are and how you talk with people and how you listen to people.
That's a good point, because I think businesses, companies are willing to invest in people, but they want to see the person investing in themselves too.
Yes.
Either willing to do the extra or, learning outside, tuition reimbursement, that kind of a thing. So.
Exactly.
So what, I'm trying to think of where we are in your journey here. What made you decide to leave IBM then and start your own business? Or are we not there yet? Or is there some other parts about your
let's see,
corporate
IBM, probably the big one, I know you had mentioned before in some of your other interviews, challenges along the way.
Yeah, setbacks.
And, one really big one for me that I think it's a little better for women these days is at one point I was sitting around a table and it was all men and myself, and we were working on a really tough client that was having some problems in California. And the person we were putting to at that time was the vice president, and he just, we had talked about what we were going to do, finally decided, closed his book and looked around the table and said, okay, I want everybody on a plane in 2 hours. We're going to be in San Francisco, and we need to do this and this and this. And every guy went on their cell phones and said, hey, to their partners, hey, can you pack a suitcase, meet me at the airport, I need to blah, blah. And I had no one to call because I was a single mom. And so I had to think about who is going to pick up my kids tonight.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on a trip. I had, dogs and house. And it was just such a big thing to me to realize I didn't have that person to call. And so they ended up all getting there and having a nice dinner together and doing lots of planning and all that. And I was still at home trying to figure out who could take care of my kids overnight and who could get the trash out in the morning, and all that. So I flew in and got in about midnight, had to miss all that, but I at least got to the meetings the next day.
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me for women these days, whether they have a partner or not. I know sometimes you have a partner that also has a big job, so I'm a real planner, so I definitely had plans for things like that, but not in 2 hours notice. I just had never been in that situation. So I got better and better at having either neighbors or family, or eventually I ended up having graduate students from CU. I was in Boulder in those days. So you just have to build those systems around you that you have the same opportunity as every other person in the room.
Yeah.
If they can drop everything and go, then you need to be able to drop everything and go. Or, maybe get into a different job, or, those things you just need to think about when you're on your own and have to, do things sometimes at the last second for your career.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because that's not what you usually see when you look at corporate leaders in your organization. You don't realize some of those sacrifices and that demand on the time, etc. So, I feel like, what you missed out by not going to dinner was probably pretty powerful, right? In terms of it's that meeting before the meeting, it's the informal where you learn about your colleagues, your boss, and they learn about you, right? And it's really powerful networking and team building, right?
Yeah, and you do have to make up for it. Like you said, the next day I got with the colleagues and said, can you at breakfast just update me on what you guys decided last night? And what? So I had to really quick just take it in as fast as I could that morning to be ready for.
Well, and plus you're probably exhausted because you got in later, exactly. And you're a little freaked out. It's like when you get late to a meeting, right? You're just like in that mode of I got to get in the right mindset.
Right.
So, wow.
Yeah.
So, speaking of mindset, let's just jump there. What has been kind of your normal psyche or that little voice in your head over your life? Has it been the biggest cheerleader and supporter? Has it been the critic? Has it been a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's definitely been the critic. But I think that's been the challenge for me. I learned early on in my career, I'd watch other women and men, both, that I had mentors on both sides, that I would hear them say things like, I'm scared to death to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I think, oh yeah, we can just do it anyway, even though in my head I'd say, there's no way, you don't know anything about that, or, how much do you know about that?
Yeah.
But I'd listen to them and think, well, if they can do it, why can't I try it? Let me just try. And so I'd throw myself in there for either a presentation or, managing an area that I didn't really know or something like that. And I'd get in there and it would be hard, there's no question. And you're swimming and it's a lot to learn and all those things. But when you come out the other end, you go, oh yeah, okay, I can do that. Or I learned a lot about myself, a lot of self-reflection on what can I do and what can I rely on, and how can I really jump in there and be what I need to be, even if I don't feel like I can. Just do it anyway, jump.
Did you ever not jump? Did you ever let the voice go, oh, this is too scary, I'm not going to do that?
I had a few that, especially overseas, and it was hard too with kiddos, because you don't want to. I had a few opportunities to go overseas and have assignments, and it would just be so complicated to take the kids out of school or have them, and I probably could have done it, but it would have been a real stretch. And there's some I wish, gosh, I should have just done it, especially one of them was in London, so I thought they speak English, so but it would have been a lot. It would have been a lot to do it. And then other times I think, oh, thank goodness I didn't, because I'd watch other people do it and think, oh, wow, that's, a lot personally and professionally.
Yeah.
I think if it had just been me, I probably would have done more things like that, because I love to travel and I love the challenge of the cultures and all that. But so it's a little bit mixed. There's some I wish I had just jumped in and done, and some it's a good thing I didn't.
Yeah, because you do have to look at your whole. I mean, you were responsible for more than just you. So, but I love that you mentioned that your mentor said, "I'm scared to death to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway." Sometimes your leaders don't articulate that, and you just think, "Man, they know what they're doing. They must have this insight I'm not aware of. They're not even seeming nervous. Have we really talked this through?" And I think that's part of why I'm doing this podcast too, is I want people to hear, these are the things that go on in human beings' brains, right? But sometimes we don't articulate it. So sometimes you do have to ask or have those trusted confidence that where you do find out the inside scoop and that they are just as scared as you are. But like you said, but we can do it anyway, or let's do it anyway because these things are the right reasons, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I had really good mentor woman at the beginning, especially, where she would just say, well, what if? Well, why don't you just try it? Or what if it all just goes bad? It all goes bad. We'll pick up the pieces later. Just go give it a try. Or sometimes she'd say, well, pretend like you do and go give it a try. Just give yourself a pep talk and go through, be prepared, definitely have all your notes, but then go in and pretend like you do know it all, and see what that feels like. Just jump in there, see what it feels like. And she's right most of the time, not every time. For the most part, I'd say 90% of the time, you come out of there going, oh, I do know more about this than I realize, and more than maybe most in the room most of the time. Or you just, it's more than not, it's better to just get in there and give it a try and see what you can do, and talk to yourself about it ahead of time to say, come on, just give it a try.
Yeah. If you can find a way that you yourself feel prepared, ready, right? I mean, I've studied enough. I have the background. I have my little voice in check.
Yes.
Then you can be successful, right? And you don't have to know everything, but you have to know enough to be in that seat to begin with, which it sounds like you did. So talk a little bit about this transition then from corporate to consultant, now to board of director. I know that's a different mindset too. I've been through it. I'm not on the board of director side for a for-profit company. I've done the nonprofit, but so talk about kind of how you've made those changes and those decisions.
Yeah. So toward the end of my IBM career, I kept thinking through, what do I want to do next? I want to do something really different. I'd get recruiter calls for other big corporations, and I thought, I just don't want, I want something really, really different. And one day out of the blue, a recruiter called and asked me if I wanted to be a chief operating officer at a nonprofit here in town. And I thought, wow, it'd be tough to get the job. She was really clear. I didn't really have the nonprofit background, and it was real science, conservation, animals, things like that. But she said,
was it wild animals?
No, wild. Well, some wild animals.
Not quite your childhood dream, but maybe.
Exactly. But I've always loved service, and I have volunteered my whole life and all that stuff. So I thought I'll just emphasize that. And they really needed a business person to turn the business around. So I thought, I'll just emphasize what I do know. And I didn't qualify for every single thing on there. I had some pretty tough competition, but I thought, back to my mentors telling me, give it a try. Just see, do your best, definitely do your homework, definitely, see what your strengths are to this job. And if you get it, fantastic. If you don't, there's other options, to always kind of just get in there, get in the arena, as Brene Brown is one of my heroes that I love to follow.
Yeah,
and she talks about being in the arena, and that really spoke to me, that be authentic and be in the arena, because those are the people that you want to be with, not the people that are rehearsing too much or over-editing their lives or staying too safe. I mean, everybody's different. We have to respect safety of where people want to be, but it's amazing what you can get out there in the world and experience, and the people that you meet, and the person you become. So each time I would develop and become a little different person, and I love that nonprofit world for the time I was there. And then I went on to having my own company, which I kept getting calls from people saying, can you help me with this? Or I don't know how to do this business plan, that kind of thing. And so I jump in and help them, and started at the beginning doing things for free just because they were friends. And then slowly thought, well, my time's valuable. And I talked to them about it, and they'd say, oh my gosh, yeah, I'll pay you for that. And so slowly got into that. And then realized, in talking with some friends that they're on, board of directors for for-profit companies, and I'd always done nonprofit companies, and I knew what that was like, and I'd been the C-suite with this nonprofit to our board of directors, so I knew what it was like to be on both sides now.
Yeah.
And so I thought, that's perfect. I can bring my experience, and especially if there's any kind of technology. At the end of my IBM career, I was doing blockchain and fintech and all the latest with some of the big technology that companies are grappling with. And so I thought, I could bring that to the table, as well as my leadership and broad background to a board of directors. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you've got so much to offer. Breadth and depth.
I'd like to think so. I hope so. Yeah, we're looking for companies now, and seeing where there is alignment and what value I can bring to the table. So I'm excited to keep exploring that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds like, I think you have a very powerful resume, obviously, but also the skill set and the authenticity that you bring, and this risk-taking or courage that we were talking about earlier, if you're not in the arena.
Yeah.
Well, I will also say too, once you start showing up authentically, I think it's easier to be more courageous, because you start sharing that I don't know this, I'm afraid of this, but we need to do this, and this is why. I mean, it's a different thing than I've made the decision and we're going to do this, without sharing it or involving the people to help you make the right decisions or more educated decisions. So
that is so true. And I think that's the big evolution in my leadership life, especially career-wise, is young, especially, I just kept trying to put on the IBM face of, what I'd been taught in school and what are the right answers and, all that kind of stuff, which is fine. That's how you practice and, get good at things, is trying things out. But it was always kind of the corporate line and the corporate, management things they taught you and all that. And slowly I realized the best leaders are the ones that are really authentic, and they bring themselves to the table, everything. Yes, you make mistakes, and be authentic about that. Hopefully not too many, or you need to do something else. But to really just be yourself. And there actually was a quote that I read quite a while ago, but I still look at it and keep it up in my house. And it's by Shannon L. Alder, and it says, when you stop living your life based on what others think of you, real life begins. At that moment, you will finally see the door of self-acceptance open. And that really spoke to me that I needed to accept who I was as a leader and really see what I brought to the table, and not just that all those 10 lessons I learned at IBM that I bring to the table. It's great you learn all that stuff, but own it in my words and own it in my authenticity. And over the years, what I got from, I'd talk to my folks, and I'd ask for feedback always, especially at evaluation time. It goes both ways. I'd evaluate them and I'd have them evaluate me. And so it was great to learn that they love that too. They want a human being to work with.
Yeah.
They don't want a robot that knows every answer and, never makes a mistake. And so it was quite a journey for me to bring myself to the leadership table, and really be real with the people, because that's really what they want to.
Yeah.
They really don't want just all the perfect answers and the perfect manager.
Well, and if life or work or the world was perfect, anyway, we wouldn't need human beings, I guess.
Exactly.
But I love that quote. I like that.
I love her. She's a great
when you
author.
stop living your life based on what others think of you. It's funny, when I made my transition out of corporate, and I was looking for that next corporate thing, and then I was consulting, and then I was like, that's kind of what happened to me, because I kept thinking, well, it occurred to me one day, I was thinking about what's the job that's going to be that next right thing for me when I look at myself from the outside. It was very weird. It wasn't, what do I want to do and how do I want to spend my time? It's like, well, I can't do that, even though that looks super fun, because it's not what I think others might think is the next right role. It was a very weird aha moment that I'm like, I can do anything I want. What is it? And it was scary and exciting and liberating all at the same time. So.
Yeah, I think was the key for me too, is in that exploration, you realize it's not that far out there anyway. Like you've brought your storytelling back to all the things you've done in your life, and you're using all those skills. It's not like you threw away your background and now you're doing this. You bring it all together. And so I think that was the aha over time, is when I bring myself to it, then I'm bringing my whole background, of course, all my skills and all of that, but it makes it richer and better and more juicy at the table. And that's what people want, They want to all be in it together. We're all in this together. We're not separate and you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. That's not what people want.
Yeah.
So.
And when you join a board, then the board now it has to become different with a new player, right? Or a new person, right? Because now it's another group dynamic. You bring a whole different level and skill set, and so that's got to really change the flavor of things.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to be in that atmosphere and what I bring to the table, and definitely will need to be cohesive, and you want to, because you're now advisors, you're not operational, you're more advising and looking ahead with direction, which I love, and really being as a cohesive group as you can, because you don't want to be, working with the CEO and other C-suite and having different messages.
Yeah.
You really need to be together as a team.
So Brenda, I could continue chatting because I have all these questions about self-reflection and awareness and how you did all that, but we really got to start wrapping this up. So one thing I always like to ask toward the end is, what do you feel was one of the smartest things you did, either for your career or maybe even just for yourself, when you kind of look back on your life?
It's definitely taking time for that self-reflection. That was huge for me, especially being an introvert. I learned that I get energy from the quietness and from really looking back on what worked and didn't work for me and why, and not getting into the super analytical, but more the heart and the logic, bring it all together, the combination of it, saying, okay, well, in my gut, what was that? What was that? Lots of curiosity and lots of questioning. And
did you do this through journaling, or did you take time away and say, I'm going to take the weekend? Some leadership teams go on retreats, or some people individually go on their own retreats. Is it something like that, or was it just on the plane ride home you were?
That's a great question, especially during the family years, with children stuff. You
were going.
Unless you are on the plane, because there's times there, although you have a lot of deadlines, so sometimes on the plane you're just trying to get work done. But either that, I'm a walker. I love to walk, and so that was kind of my time to when I was either walking or doing, some, like I occasionally go to the gym for, elliptical and that kind of stuff. That was my time. I would sometimes use it for books, it's called books on tape back then. Those days, now it's more audible.
Now it's audible. Podcast.
But I also use that as the reflective time, and I'd make it pretty intentional. Sometimes you just want to zone out.
Well, and working out, that's the beauty of working out, right? Is that you have to focus on, or you're going to trip and fall. It's great mind eraser. For a period of time.
But now that my kids are all gone and all that, it's more intentional, reflective time. Usually it does involve walking. I love being outside and feeling the fresh air, and not make it like I'm trying to get the walkathon done, more like a stroll maybe, or some quiet time sitting. I do some what I'd call reflective meditation. I wouldn't call it a huge meditation on, where I want to completely be gone, but definitely on different topics, especially if something's not setting well with me. It helps me bring it up and notice the feelings, and think, why do I feel that way? Why do I feel like that? Or what really happened there? Or just questioning, and back to that curiosity. I think people asking themselves questions instead of being defensive, that's just, I really learned that early on. I had mentors that would say, wait, what's going on that you're so defensive about this?
And you're like going, what do you mean I'm defensive?
Yeah, I'm not defensive. They're wrong. And then you kind of calm down into, I see. I still feel like that. Also, let me see how else I feel. And you just dig a little bit more, and it just helps to put it in perspective, in the bigger picture. And especially where other people are coming from. That's the other part I love about Brenda and some of the authors that talk about, how does that other person feel? They're a person too, and they're a wife, mother, sister, brother. They're coming from who knows what they're up against that day. It's really helped me with empathy with other people and what they're doing and how they're feeling today. Put it in perspective. You just never know.
Well, and it sounds like with your career at IBM, because you moved to so many different areas, you were starting over a lot, even though you're in the same company. And I think I experienced this too. You're building relationships. You really have to learn people and get to know them and understand, versus I move in and we're just another machine, right? This is a group of people, and who are they? So, wow. Okay.
One more quick trick I just thought of for maybe somebody who's starting out, or when they're in this, whether it's corporate world or even the entrepreneur world. Something I started from a mentor a long time ago that really served me is every time I'd meet someone, I'd write it down, and I'd write down what year it was I met them, what their title was. I'd even things like they had 2 children and they lived in, this part of the country, or I just kept notes my whole way. And what would be fun is, 10 years later, I'd run into them again.
Oh.
And you know how you see a face, but you're not sure? Mm-hmm. And so I'd go back to my notes and go, oh my gosh, that's Arthur. And then, and you just start putting it together. And then when you're working together, they can't believe that you remember them. Mm-hmm. And they can't believe you remember all that detail. Yeah. And you think, oh yeah, but it's just a great way to, and then you make connections too. Mm-hmm. Because I would make connections in my little notebook, Yeah. Right, people can do that online now more, but it would be a great way to make those connections later. That Arthur knows Joe, and Joe knows. So it's just amazing how the world's so connected. Yeah. Not only in IBM, but even we work with lots of other companies and lots of customers, and I've used it even now in my world, outside of IBM. Is I'll run into someone and think, you're at that vendor that it's just awesome. And you can't remember all that. There's so many people in life.
But sometimes the act of writing it down is going to increase your memory, just number one. True. But then secondly, if you've got a good tool or system for that, then you can go back and keep track of all that. Wow. Yeah. Well, again, I could keep going. Yeah. I have much more to ask you. What I might need to do is follow back up with you. How's that?
That sounds good.
I've been saying that to some of I think I need to follow back with everybody, do that 6 months check-in and say, how did you get here since our last talk? So one gal, I don't know if you listened to her podcast, she's creating a community of global citizen astronauts. Mm-hmm. And so she said, when I interview her next, I'll be interviewing her and she'll be on the moon.
Ooh.
Because this is about space travel, commercial space travel, which I'm like, that would be awesome. So, okay, but I digress. So, Brenda, anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up?
I really appreciate what you're doing. I just think this is such an avenue. When people get to hear other people's stories, it can be a real aha and realize they're not alone. Because I remember many times in my career feeling like I wasn't the only one.
Oh, yeah.
And then you hear other people and think, oh, I'm not the only one.
There is so much comfort in that. And thank you for wrapping that way, because that's exactly what this podcast is about, is to give people that inside access that we are all just people. We're all doing our best, making the best decisions we can. And the more self-aware you are, the better you can manage yourself and then manage and lead others. And that's, I guess we'll wrap on that note. So thank you so much.
Nice.
I certainly enjoyed hearing your story. And listeners, if you've enjoyed today's interview, then please subscribe and get alerts on future interviews. If you've got any questions for me or for Brenda, please post them on my website, lifestorycurator.com. You can also find me on Apple, Google, YouTube. I'm all over. So please share with your friends and family and others who might need to have access to these stories. Someone might be stuck, they might be in transition or just starting out, and these can be really powerful stories for them. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Have a good day.